The fastest way to kill a small YouTube channel is copying big YouTubers. I know that sounds backwards because everywhere you look, someone is telling you to model successful creators, study their thumbnails, mirror their upload schedules, and basically do everything they do. But here's the brutal truth that nobody wants to admit. What works for creators with hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers will actually sabotage your growth when you have 0 to 1,000 subs. I get why copying feels like the safest move. You see a channel with 3 million subscribers getting consistent views, and you think, well, if I just do exactly what they're doing, I'll get the same results. It makes logical sense. These creators have proven formulas, tested strategies, and they're clearly doing something right. So you start copying their video titles, recreating their thumbnail style, matching their video length, and uploading on the same schedule. You might even copy their intro style, their pacing, and their overall content approach. This feels like the smart, low-risk strategy because you're not reinventing the wheel. You're following a blueprint that already works. Most YouTube advice actually encourages this mindset. Gurus constantly tell you to find successful videos in your niche and replicate them. They say modeling success is the fastest path to growth. And honestly, I understand why this appeals to new creators. When you're starting with 0 subscribers and 0 views, copying someone who gets millions of views feels like following a treasure map. But here's where everything falls apart, and this is the core problem that most small creators never understand. The algorithm treats big channels and small channels completely differently. When you have 1 million subscribers, you've already built massive audience trust. Your viewers will click on your videos regardless of how good your title or thumbnail is because they know you, they like your content, and they're invested in your channel. You could upload a video called My Random Thoughts with a bland thumbnail, and it would still get hundreds of thousands of views because your audience is loyal. Big creators can get away with vague, broad content because they're not competing for attention anymore. They already have it. Their subscribers get notifications. They show up in recommended feeds automatically, and YouTube promotes their content because the algorithm knows their audience will engage. This creates a completely different playing field where the rules that apply to large channels simply don't work for small ones. When you're a small creator with 0 to 1,000 subscribers, every single click matters. You don't have an established audience that will watch anything you post. You don't get the benefit of the doubt from viewers. You're not showing up in recommended feeds consistently. You're essentially invisible to most of YouTube, which means you have to fight for every single view, every click, and every moment of attention. Let me break down the specific mistakes I see small creators make when they copy big channels. First, they adopt long, slow intros because their favorite big creator takes 30 seconds to get to the point. But when you're a small channel, viewers have 0 patience. They don't know who you are, they don't trust you yet, and they have no reason to stick around for a slow build-up. Big creators can afford long intros because their audience is already invested. You can't. Second, small creators copy vague, generic titles like My Thoughts on This Topic or Why I Stopped Doing This Thing because they see successful channels using these formats. But these titles only work when people already care about your thoughts and opinions. When you're unknown, nobody cares about your random thoughts. They care about solving their problems, learning something specific, or getting clear value from your video. Third, there's the thumbnail problem. Big creators can use simple thumbnails with just their face or basic text because their brand recognition does the heavy lifting. Their audience recognizes them instantly and trusts their content. But when you're a small creator, your thumbnail needs to work harder. It needs to communicate clear value, create emotional curiosity, or promise a specific outcome because you don't have brand recognition to fall back on. Fourth, many small creators copy the broad, general advice approach they see from established channels. Big creators can make videos about general topics because they've built authority in their space. But when you're starting out, you need to solve specific, narrow problems that people are actively searching for. General advice gets lost in the sea of content, but specific solutions to real problems get found. And fifth, there's the consistency trap. Small creators see big channels posting daily or multiple times per week and think that's the key to growth. But big creators can maintain engagement with frequent uploads because they have an existing audience hungry for their content. When you're small, consistency without quality or relevance is just consistently being ignored. The fundamental issue is that small channels need to compete on completely different metrics than large channels. You need to compete on utility, specificity, and search value rather than brand recognition and audience loyalty. You need to earn every single click through clear value propositions rather than relying on subscriber notifications and algorithmic promotion. This is actually where small creators have a massive advantage that most people don't recognize. Think of it as a David versus Goliath situation, but instead of seeing yourself as the underdog, realize that you have unique strengths that big creators simply can't use anymore. Big creators are limited by their brand image and audience expectations. They can't experiment wildly because they have a reputation to maintain. They can't be too vulnerable or too specific because they need to appeal to their broad audience. They can't pivot dramatically because their subscribers expect a certain type of content. They're actually trapped by their success in many ways. But as a small creator, you have complete freedom. You can be raw, honest, and real about your struggles. You can talk about failure, learning, and the messy process of figuring things out. You can tackle specific problems that big creators would consider too narrow for their audience. You can experiment with different approaches, formats, and topics without worrying about disappointing an established fanbase. This authenticity and specificity is incredibly valuable in today's content landscape. People are tired of polished, generic advice from creators who seem untouchable. They want real perspectives from people who are actually going through the same struggles they are. They want specific solutions to specific problems rather than broad platitudes about success. So instead of copying big creators, here's what you should do. Focus on solving one specific problem that beginners in your space actually face. Make your titles search-friendly and problem-focused rather than vague and personality-driven. Create thumbnails that communicate clear value or emotional triggers rather than relying on your face or brand recognition that doesn't exist yet. Document your actual journey and progress instead of pretending to be an expert. Share what you're learning as you learn it. Talk about your failures, your experiments, and your real results. This approach builds trust and connection in a way that polished, expert content simply cannot. Match your content strategy to your actual channel size. When you have 0 to 100 subscribers, focus on search-based content that solves specific problems. When you have 100 to 1,000 subscribers, you can start incorporating some personality-driven content while still maintaining your focus on utility. Don't try to act like a channel with 1 million subscribers when you haven't built that foundation yet. Here's a simple rule that will save you from countless mistakes. If a strategy only works because someone already has an audience, it's not for you yet. If the success of a particular approach depends on existing brand recognition, subscriber loyalty, or algorithmic favor that you haven't earned, then copying that approach will likely hurt rather than help your growth. This applies to everything from video length to upload frequency to content topics. Long-form content works for established creators because their audience is willing to invest time in their content. But if you're making 40-minute videos as a new creator, you're fighting an uphill battle because viewers have no reason to invest that much time in someone they don't know yet. Complex, multi-part series work for big creators because their audience will follow along and wait for the next episode. But if you're a small creator making part one of a 10-part series, you're essentially gambling that viewers will care enough to come back, which is unlikely when you haven't established that relationship yet. Even upload schedules need to be considered differently. Big creators can upload daily because their audience expects and wants that frequency of content. But if you're a small creator forcing yourself to upload daily, you might be sacrificing quality for quantity, which is the opposite of what small channels need to focus on. The reality of growing a small YouTube channel is that it's slow but predictable when you approach it correctly. You build trust one video at a time by consistently delivering value to people who are actively looking for solutions to their problems. You establish credibility by being honest about your level of experience and sharing genuine insights from your actual journey. You don't need millions of subscribers to make an impact or even to build a sustainable income from your channel. Some of the most successful creators I know have relatively small but highly engaged audiences because they've focused on serving their specific community rather than trying to appeal to everyone. The key is patience and focusing on the fundamentals that actually matter for small channels. Create content that people are actively searching for. Solve real problems that your target audience faces. Be specific rather than general. Be honest rather than trying to appear more successful than you are. Be helpful rather than trying to be entertaining until you've built the foundation for entertainment-based content. Copying big creators delays this important learning process. When you copy someone else's approach, you're not learning what works for your specific situation, audience size, and content style. You're not developing your own voice or understanding what resonates with your actual viewers. You're basically trying to skip steps in a process where each step builds the foundation for the next level. Growth becomes much more predictable when you stop chasing shortcuts and start building the right foundation for your current stage. Focus on creating content that delivers clear value to a specific audience. Focus on getting found through search rather than hoping to go viral. Focus on building genuine connections with the viewers you do get rather than obsessing over subscriber counts. Remember that every successful creator started exactly where you are now. They didn't start with millions of subscribers and perfect strategies. They learned through experimentation, failure, and gradual improvement. The difference between creators who make it and those who don't isn't talent or luck. It's persistence and the willingness to learn from their own experience rather than just copying others. The most successful small creators I know stopped trying to replicate what big channels were doing and instead focused on what their specific audience needed. They stopped worrying about competing with established creators and started competing on the metrics that actually matter for small channels: utility, specificity, and genuine value. If you want honest advice about growing your small YouTube channel without the hype and false promises, consider subscribing. I share real strategies that work for creators at different stages of growth, not one-size-fits-all advice that ignores the realities of starting from zero. In upcoming videos, I'll be covering low-competition keyword strategies for small channels, how to find content ideas that actually get searched, and the common beginner mistakes that keep channels stuck at 0 views even when they're creating decent content. The path to YouTube success isn't about copying what already works for other people. It's about understanding what works for your specific situation and building from there. Stop looking for shortcuts and start building the foundation that will actually support long-term growth.